We don't serve charity here. Get out, before I call someone who'll make you." Lisa Carter's voice rang out, loud and biting, cutting through the low hum of the bar like a knife through cloth. Her finger jabbed the air toward Oliver Brooks, her face twisted with open disgust. The clink of glasses stopped. The shuffle of stools fell still. Conversations died mid-sentence. The wrongness of it settled over the room like a heavy, choking fog. Oliver sat where he had quietly taken a seat at the bar, his hands resting gently on the worn surface. His cap, veteran, United States Army, shaded eyes lined by years, eyes that had witnessed the weight of sacrifice and the quiet cost of duty. His coat, folded neat as always, sat beside him. His voice had been soft, respectful, his request simple. A beer, nothing more. But Lisa saw none of it. She saw only what her anger let her see. An old man, a burden, someone to be cast out. "Don't think you can come in here looking for a handout. Not tonight. Not ever." Her words were sharp, meant to sting, meant to shame. Oliver didn't flinch. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his pocket, his fingers finding his wallet, moving with care as if to prove what words now seemed unable to. But she wasn't looking. She had already turned away, arms crossed, the set of her shoulders proud in her cruelty. The bar was silent now, every eye drawn to the scene. A young man near the jukebox stared, frozen, shame rising hot in his chest. A pair of old friends at the corner table lowered their heads, unwilling to meet Oliver's gaze, knowing too well what injustice looked like. Outside, the first low rumble of engines touched the night air, unnoticed by most, but not for long. The sound of respect on its way. The morning had begun as so many did for Oliver Brooks, early, quiet, touched with the simple rhythms of a man who asked little of the world. The first light of dawn crept through the curtains of his modest home, casting long golden lines across the floorboards, warming the small space that held his few treasures. Oliver rose slowly, joints stiff but sure, his body marked by time and service, but guided by steady purpose. He moved first to the window, where the flag waited, carefully folded on the sill each night, raised with quiet reverence each morning. The fabric unfurled in his hands, the stars and stripes catching the breeze as he fastened it to the pole outside, standing for more than just a country, but for the memory of those he had stood beside, those he had outlived. His day passed in small kindnesses. He swept the sidewalk not just in front of his home, but for the neighbor next door, a widow who'd long since grown too frail to manage it. He bent slowly, his bad knee protesting, to retrieve a paper blown from an elderly man's porch, setting it carefully by the door. He paused to kneel beside a boy on the corner. His bicycle chain slipped free, and with steady, oil-marked fingers, helped set it right. Oliver's steps that day were slow, measured, not for lack of strength, but for the weight he carried in memory, in duty, in the years that shaped him. His coat, worn but clean, was buttoned against the evening chill as he made his way through town, the sights familiar, the faces kind. He had not chosen the bar for the drink. The beer, when it came, would have been a token, not a prize. No, what drew him was the quiet corner, the hum of low voices, the comfort of familiar walls. It was the kind of place his closest friend had loved, a friend long gone now, a friend whose voice echoed in his heart, even still. Matt Ford. The name still carried weight for Oliver, though it had been decades since Matt's laughter filled the air, since his boots had walked beside Oliver's on foreign soil. A brother in service, a friend in peace, a man who'd found comfort in places like this. Simple, honest, unpretentious. No need to be fancy, Oliver. Here I can just be myself. Nobody cares, and that's how I like it. That memory came to him now, as he pushed open the bar's worn door, the scent of old wood and spilled ale greeting him like an old companion. He chose a seat without ceremony, folded his coat neatly, and asked softly for a single beer. A small thing, a quiet comfort. But comfort would not come that night. Lisa Carter did not look at the man before her. Not truly. Her eyes slid past the quiet dignity of Oliver Brooks, past the neatly folded coat, past the steady hand that reached for his wallet. All she saw was what her bitterness let her see. Another old man at the end of a long shift. Another burden. Another nuisance standing between her and the end of her day. She crossed her arms, her stance closing tight, her voice rising again, sharp enough to cut through the bar's stillness like a blade. I said, "Move along. I'm not here to hand out drinks to anyone looking to score a free one. Not tonight." The words slapped the air, loud enough that no one could pretend not to hear. Conversations that had started to murmur again fell silent once more. A man at the corner table lowered his glass, his gaze fixed on the worn wood in front of him, unable to meet Oliver's eyes. A couple near the jukebox shifted uncomfortably. Their smiles faded, their hands still on the buttons that no longer seemed important to press. Oliver said nothing at first. His fingers, lined and steady despite the weight of years, reached slowly into his coat pocket, finding the familiar shape of his worn wallet. He drew it out, his motions deliberate, respectful, as if to show his intent, without adding fuel to the fire. The leather, soft from decades of use, rested in his palm. But Lisa never saw it. She didn't look. Her eyes were already turned away, her scowl fixed on some distant point as she wiped at the counter with angry, dismissive strokes. Her ears were closed to his quiet explanations, her mind locked in the wrong she thought she saw, too blinded by bitterness to notice the truth standing right before her. Oliver didn't even have the chance to draw out the bill, to show that he came as a paying man, not a beggar. The chance was stolen by her scorn, by her refusal to see. The bar's noise had stilled, but the storm within Oliver Brooks was quiet. Not the kind that rages, but the kind that presses on a man's heart, heavy with what should never have been. Lisa's words, sharp and unearned, clung to the air around him like smoke, but Oliver did not let bitterness rise. Instead, the moment folded him inward, drawing him back across the years to a face that time could not fade. Matt Ford. His brother in arms, his truest friend. In his mind's eye, Oliver saw the night clearly. The two of them, younger, in uniform, seated at a small, Allied-friendly tavern near their base. The place was simple, humble, rough wooden tables, a low ceiling stained by years of smoke, the warm hum of voices and the soft clatter of cups. It was the kind of place where no one asked where you'd been that day, or what the morning might bring. Matt had leaned back in his chair that night, boots scuffed, cap tilted low, a grin playing at the corners of his mouth. His voice was low, meant only for Oliver. "No need to be fancy, Oliver. Here I can just be myself. Nobody cares. And that's how I like it." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of all they'd seen, and all they still faced. That tavern had been their refuge, the one place where Matt could shake off the dust of duty, where he could be just a man, not a soldier, if only for a little while. And when their next mission came, Matt had been the one to stay behind, covering the retreat, holding the line. He never left that place again. The tavern, the mission, the man, all tied together now in memory, in sorrow, in the quiet promise Oliver carried ever since. That's what had brought him to places like this bar. Not for the beer, for the peace, for the echo of Matt's laughter, the reminder of what it meant to simply be. And tonight, that small piece had been shattered. Oliver's fingers rested on the wallet still unopened on the bar. His gaze lifted, taking in the space that no longer felt like shelter. The faces around him turned away, unable to meet his eyes, knowing they'd stood silent while wrong was done. And beyond the walls, the engines grew nearer, steady, measured, the sound of respect drawing close. Outside, the night air carried a sound that grew with each passing breath, the low, steady rumble of motorcycles, rolling through the quiet streets like distant thunder. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't loud enough yet to shake the windows, but it was certain, sure as the promise of a coming storm. Lisa heard nothing beyond the beat of her own pride, still too blinded by her small victory to notice the shift in the air. The bar's regulars sat frozen, glancing at one another, shame tugging at their hearts, yet none finding the voice to speak. Not yet. Oliver remained still, hands resting on the unopened wallet, eyes calm beneath the brim of his cap. His posture held no anger, only the patient endurance of a man who had seen storms far greater than this. The rumble came closer, spreading along the block. Engines eased down, one by one, headlights flickering through the dusty windows, their beams cutting lines across the floorboards like searchlights of honor. And then the door opened. First through was Tommy Vargas, his boots scuffed by years of road and service, his leather jacket worn but proud, marked by patches that spoke of places seen, of brothers lost, of duty kept. At his side came Dylan Vargas, his younger brother by years but his equal in the weight of what they stood for. The two paused just inside the doorway, the cold night air following them in, their eyes sweeping the room in an instant. They saw Oliver at once. Through the glass they had seen him even before they entered, a man known to them, not by loud boasts or grand deeds told, but by the steady grace of a life lived with honor. Behind them came more, the bikers who rode not for trouble, not for show, but because they knew what respect looks like, and tonight they had heard its call. The bar, small and dim just moments before, now filled with their quiet presence, the kind that made the air feel charged, the kind that spoke louder than any shout. And still, Lisa said nothing, but the color drained from her face as the truth of what she had done began to dawn. The bar felt smaller now, the walls seeming to draw in closer, the air thick with the weight of what had come through the door. The bikers filled the space without crowding it. They needed no grand gestures, no raised voices. Their presence alone was enough to shift the balance of the room. Tommy Vargas stepped forward first, his boots slow on the worn floor, each stride measured, steady, as if the whole world might see the lesson in it. His eyes found Oliver's, and in that glance passed a silent promise. "You're not alone." He turned then to Lisa, who stood behind the bar as if rooted to the spot, the bravado drained from her frame, replaced by the creeping, bitter taste of regret. Tommy's voice, when it came, was low, calm, but it filled the space with the quiet authority of a man who had earned the right to speak. "He's not asking you for anything," Tommy said, his words slow, deliberate. "But he's owed more than you could ever give." The bar fell utterly silent, not the strained silence of before, but one charged with the truth laid bare. Dylan came to stand beside his brother, his eyes steady on Lisa, his posture relaxed but unshakable. "This man," Dylan added, his voice softer but no less firm, "earned his peace. All he asked was to sit and be left to it." Lisa opened her mouth, perhaps to excuse, perhaps to defend, but no words would come. The moment was beyond her reach now, the wrongness too clear, too large. One by one, the bikers moved to the bar, not in haste, not in anger, but with quiet purpose. They laid bills down, enough for the beer Oliver had asked for and more. One of them placed the glass gently before him, a small tribute, an unspoken apology offered on behalf of what had been done. And still, no one cheered, no one jeered. The moment needed no noise. It was enough to stand, to witness, to restore what had been taken. Outside, the line of bikes waited, headlights glowing in the dark, engines purring like a promise kept. The bar that had moments ago felt tight with tension now seemed to exhale. The weight lifted, the wrong put right in the only way that truly mattered. The bikers remained still, their presence a shield around Oliver. Not boastful, not loud, but unshakable. Oliver sat quietly, his hand resting lightly on the glass placed before him, not grasping for it, not rushing, just holding the moment, feeling the warmth of the simple gesture, the weight of what it meant. His eyes lifted to meet Tommy's, then Dylan's, and then the others, each nodding in silent respect, a bond of honor passing between them. Lisa stood frozen behind the bar, her face pale beneath the harsh glow of the neon sign above. The defiance that had burned so hot in her moments before was gone, melted beneath the gaze of those who had come to bear witness. She tried to speak, her mouth opening, but the apology tangled on her tongue, too small now to mend what words had broken. Tommy gave her no scorn, no lecture, only a steady look, the kind that lingers long after words have faded, the kind that teaches without speaking. Outside, the bikes waited, their lights painting the street in soft halos, their engines a steady hum like the heartbeat of the night itself. Neighbors had gathered at their windows, drawn by the sound, by the sense that something had happened worth remembering. Oliver lifted the glass at last, not in celebration, but in quiet tribute, to Matt Ford, to the friends he'd lost, to the simple peace he'd sought, to the honor that had come, unasked, but deeply needed. The bikers stayed until he finished. Then one by one they turned for the door, their boots soft on the floor, their presence leaving the place better than they'd found it. The night's peace, once shattered, had been restored, but the story did not end at the bar's threshold. Word of what had unfolded traveled quickly, carried on the quiet conversations of those who had borne witness. By dawn, it had reached the ears of those who needed to know. The owner of the bar, a man who had built his business on more than drink, who believed that hospitality was a kind of honor in itself, came at first light. His face was lined with the weight of what he'd heard, his eyes tired, not from sleep lost, but from the burden of knowing a wrong had been done under his roof. Lisa stood behind the bar that morning, the silence between them louder than any scolding could have been. The owner spoke few words. He didn't need many. His disappointment spoke louder than anger, his quiet resolve sharper than any raised voice. "This place stands for more than that," he said simply, his gaze steady on hers. "And you know it." Lisa tried to explain, to excuse, to soften the shape of what she'd done. But the words faltered, hollow in the space between them. She saw it in his eyes. The choice was made. She was let go that morning, not out of rage but out of necessity, the kind of firm justice that keeps a place honest. As she left, head low, she carried the weight of what she'd done, the memory of the night written deep in her conscience. And the bar stood a little taller for it, its name no longer shadowed by the shame of that night, its promise of respect renewed. The door of the bar swung open with a soft creak as Oliver stepped out into the cool night. The air smelled of rain not yet fallen, of dust settled after a long day. The street before him glowed with the soft light of headlights. The bikes lined along the block like silent sentinels. Engines rumbled low, steady, like the heartbeat of a community that had come when called without a word spoken. Oliver paused on the worn step, his gaze lifting to take in the scene, the line of chrome and steel, the brothers in leather and patches, the faces of those who knew without asking, who stood without needing thanks. The breeze caught the brim of his cap, tugged at the edge of his coat, carried with it the quiet sound of engines waiting for him. His hand rested briefly on the doorframe, rough wood beneath his fingers, grounding him in the moment. He drew a slow breath, tasting the night, feeling the peace that had been restored, not given, but earned by the strength of those who remembered what honor truly means. And when he spoke, it was soft, meant more for the night than for any ear. Respect, given where it's due, felt where it counts. The words faded into the night, carried on the wind as the bikers began to ride, engines rising in a low chorus of unity. Oliver watched them go, the taillights glowing like embers as they rolled down the darkened street, leaving the town quiet again, but changed. He turned for home, his steps steady, the weight of the day eased by the simple grace of those who had stood beside him. The night after the stand at the bar, Tommy and Dylan Vargas rode in silence. The cool wind on their faces carried the weight of what they'd witnessed, what they'd helped set right. The town lay quiet behind them, the glow of street lamps fading as they took the long way home, engines humming low beneath the stars. But as the miles passed, the brothers spoke, softly at first, then with growing certainty. What had happened wasn't just a moment to remember. It was a reminder of what their town needed, of what men like Oliver Brooks deserved, not just in passing, but always. Within weeks, a plan took root. Not loud, not rushed, but sure. They found a building at the edge of town, sturdy and worn, its bones strong beneath the dust of years. Together they worked, sanding, mending, painting, shaping it into a place where no one would be turned away for the lines on their face or the years on their back. They called it Ford's Rest. The name was no accident. It was a promise, a tribute, to Matt Ford, the man whose spirit had taught Oliver the value of quiet peace, and whose memory now watched over a place where dignity was a given, not a prize to be earned. The bar opened without fanfare. No banners, no speeches, just an open door, the warm light of welcome spilling onto the sidewalk, the smell of wood and leather, the hum of conversation low and kind. Word spread, as it always does when something true is built. Veterans came, old, young, alone, in groups. Riders came, patched and plain, drawn by the promise of a seat kept warm. Neighbors came, to sit, to listen, to remember. And when Oliver walked that block again and saw the sign, Ford's Rest, he paused, his heart full. The bar wasn't just a place. It was a promise kept, a peace earned, a shelter made by those who stood when it mattered most. Inside, the hum of voices rose, gentle and sure, the kind of sound Matt would have loved, the kind of sound that meant a man could just be himself. If stories like this resonate with your heart, like and subscribe for more untold moments of honor and kindness. Let us know where you are watching from, and if this moment brought back memories you carry with you. The best way to honor their memory is to keep listening. Click on the suggested video now, and we'll walk together through another untold chapter of courage and sacrifice.